Lankavatara Sutra, Part 2, still in Chapter 1. Ravana then thought to himself, I wish I could see the Bhagavan again, for the Bhagavan is the master of all those forms of yoga that give rise to an inner realization free from fabricator or fabrication, and beyond the understanding of followers of other paths. He is the knowledge realized by yogins, and his is the experience of the bliss of samadhi, the greatest bliss only attained through meditation. I wish by means of his miraculous powers I could see the compassionate one again, the one in whom the fuel of passion and projection has been burned up, the one surrounded by the sons of Buddha who is able to penetrate the thoughts of all beings and travel to all places, know all dharmas without showing any sign of effort. I wish I could see him, so that I might attain what I've not yet attained, and not relinquish what I have already attained, might advance to that realm marked by the absence of projection, and the greatest bliss of samadhi where Tathagatas dwell. Knowing that the Lord of Lanka has already attained the forbearance of non-rising, out of compassion for the ten-headed king, the Bhagavan once more appeared on the jeweled adorned pearl-shaped summit. And the Lord of Lanka once more beheld all the glorious scenes that appeared earlier on the peaks, including the Buddhas, the Arhats, and fully enlightened ones, with their 32 aspiring attributes, and with himself and Mahamati standing before him on each peak, while the Buddha discoursed on the inner realization experienced by Tathagatas, while the yakshas surrounding them discussed the language used to express this teaching. All this was witnessed by the king. The Bhagavan, too, saw all those assembled there, but by means of his inner awareness, not his physical eye. Like a yawning lion, he smiled a great smile. He emitted rays of light from the curl between his brow, upon his sides and his waist, from the swastika on his chest, and from every hair and pore, a blazing radiance that resembled a world of soaring conflagration, rainbows in the sky or the sun at dawn. From afar, Sakura and Brahman and the four guardians beheld the Bhagavan sitting and smiling at the summit of Lanka, as if it were Mount Sumeru. Together with the Bodhisattvas in the assembly, they all asked themselves, why is Bhagavan in the assembly? They all asked themselves, smiling like this and radiating light from his body. And why is he sitting there without speaking, unmoved by the bliss of samadhi, or the self-realization of Buddha knowledge, and gazing like the king of beasts upon Ravana, and concerned with the progress of his practice? Mahamata Bahasattva had previously agreed to Ravana's request out of compassion and knew the thoughts of the Bodhisattvas in the assembly. And he knew that because of their delight in verbal instruction, beings in future ages might become confused by their preference for words over meaning, or by their attachment to the practices of lesser paths or other teachings. And they might wonder, since the Tathagata had already transcended the realm of consciousness, why is he smiling such a great smile? In anticipation of their curiosity, Mahamati asked the Buddha, well, what is the cause of such a smile? The Buddha replied, excellent, Mahamati. It is excellent that upon considering the true nature of the world and hoping to awaken beings of the past, the present, and the future, From mistaken views, you have asked me about this. For a wise man should ask questions, not only for his own benefit, but also for the benefit of others. Mahi, Ravana, the Lord of Lanka, has asked the Tathagatas, the Arhats, the fully enlightened ones of the past, a twofold question. And now he wishes to ask me. And because this teaching is not something those who follow lesser paths or the teachings or other teachings can understand, this 10-headed Yaksha shall also ask the Buddhas in the future. Where the Ravana wished to question him, the Bhagavan said, Lord of Lanka, whatever you would ask now, and I will put an end to your doubts and replace them with joy, and you will be able to see by the means of wisdom, Lord of Lanka, instead of projection. And you will be able to know the practices according to each stage and the way to attain the truth of self-realization and the bliss of samadhi. And while in samadhi, you will be protected by Buddhas and will avoid mistakes cultivated by those of lesser paths. And while dwelling in the unshakable stage, the wisdom stage, and the Dharma cloud stage of the Bodhisattva path, you will penetrate the truth that all Dharmas are without self-existence. And you will find yourself seated upon a great, giant, jeweled lotus flower, where you will enter countless samadhis and be instructed by Buddhas. Lord of Lanka, as you see yourself seated upon this giant, jeweled lotus flower, supported by the power of the Buddhas, you will be surrounded by countless bodhisattvas, also seated on lotus flowers, and all of them will be gazing upon you. This is an indescribable realm, and it is by cultivating the efficacious practices of the various stages of this path that you will be able to see this indescribable realm, and thereby experience infinite characteristics of the Tathagata stage, which is something that has never been witnessed by followers of lesser paths or other teachings, not even by Brahma, Sakara, or the Four Guardians. Excuse me. As the Buddha spoke, the Lord of Lanka rose to his feet and proceeded to cover the peak with myriads of flawless jeweled lotuses. And while a host of celestial maidens accompanied him, bearing multicolored garlands, flowers of every kind and hue, incense and fragrances of every sort, jeweled banners, flowered umbrellas, and the colored flags, and wearing necklaces of varying lengths, jeweled caps, and fleecer tiaras, and all sorts of beautiful attire, the splendor and rarity of which had never been known, much less seen. He also conjured a canopy of pearls, and countless jeweled banners above the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, and the musical instruments surpassing anything that existed among the devas and nagas and yakshas, Gandharvas, Asuras, Kinnaras, Magakas, humans and non-humans in the realm of desire, as well as instruments from Buddhalands throughout the 10 directions. After he had done all this, King Ravana suddenly arose in the air to the height equal to more than 7 palm trees. And as he stood there in space, all kinds of musical instruments, flowers, perfumes, and garments rained down and filled the sky, while he then used as offerings to Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And once he had presented his offerings, he descended from the sky and seated himself upon the adjacent jewel-covered peak that was also adorned with great jeweled lotuses as white as the sun and lightning. Once the Buddha saw that Ravana was seated, he smiled and waited for him to present his twofold question. King Ravana then asked, Bhagavan, I have asked the Tathagatas, the Arahat, sinfully enlightened ones, in the past, about two kinds of dharmas, and they answered, and now I am asking again in hopes that the Bhagavan might explain the meaning of their words. Bhagavan, I have been instructed in the two kinds of dharmas by apparition Buddhas, but not by the primordial Buddhas. The primordial Buddhas cultivated bliss of samadhi, but they do not speak about realms imagined by the mind. Most honored one, as the Tathagata is the master of all dharmas, I hope the Bhagavan, the Arahat, the fully enlightened one, will now explain the two kinds of dharma, about which the sons of Buddhas and I wish to hear. Buddha replied, then ask, Lord of Lanka, about these two kinds of dharmas. The king of Yakshas then rearranged the jewel crown and necklaces and other ornaments that graced his body and said, Tathagata has said that dharmas should be abandoned, and non-dharmas even more so. Bhagavan, what do you mean when you say that we should abandon these two kinds of dharmas? Bhagavan, what constitutes a dharma, and what constitutes a non-dharma? And if we should abandon something, why these two? Wouldn't this result in projecting the existence of something on the non-existence of something? Something that is real and something that is not real? All we do is give rise to projections instead of the undifferentiated characteristics of our repository consciousness. We will behold strands of hair in the sky and realms of impure knowledge. Bhagavan, if this is the nature of dharmas, how are we to abandon them? Buddha replied, Lord of Lanka, you'll see how ignorant people distinguish things. Things as fragile and impermanent as a clay pot, do you not? The distinctions among dharmas and non-dharmas are the projections of foolish people and not how things are viewed according to Buddha knowledge. Lord of Lanka, foolish people see things in terms of characteristics, not the wise. Lord of Lanka, a fire is seen as something uniform, but when it destroys such things as buildings or trees, its flames are distinguished depending on the shape and size of the material that burns. Why don't you see that dharmas and non-dharmas are distinguished the same way? Just as fire is seen as a singular continuity or as a diversity of flames. Or, consider the continuity of a seed, Lord of Lanka, as it gives rise to such varying forms as sprouts and stems, joints, branches, leaves and buds, fruits and flowers. And, as with external objects, the same is true of internal objects, whereby ignorance gives rise to such dharmas as skandhas, dhatus, and anyatas, as well as to the varieties of existence in the three realms and to differences in terms of suffering and joy, good and evil, speech and silence. So too, consciousness and its objects are the same, but differ depending on distinctions as to which is superior, neutral, or inferior, defiled or pure, good or bad. Not only are there distinctions among such things as these, Lords of Lanka, when yogins practice meditation, the characteristics of their internal realms are also marked by differences. How much more, then, are dharmas and non-dharmas marked by a multitude of distinctions? Thus, Lord of Lanka, the different characteristics of dharmas and non-dharmas are the result of projection. What then, Lord of Lanka, what is dharma? A dharma is whatever ordinary people and followers of lesser paths and heterodox paths imagine. Basically, they think that dharma has existence and substance and arises from causes. Such things must be abandoned and avoided. Don't engage in the projection of appearances or become attached to what are perceptions of your own mind. These people, things people grasp, such as clay pots, lack any real substance. To view dharmas like this is to abandon them. And what Lord of Lanka is a non-dharma? This refers to what has no discernible body of its own, what has no distinguishable characteristics, what is not subject to causation, and what offers no basis for views of its existence or non-existence. Therefore, it is also to be abandoned. Non-dharmas are things like horns on a rabbit, an ass, a camel, or horse, or the offspring of a barren woman. Such things lack any form or parents and cannot be perceived. They are merely names talked about according to convention. They are not things that can be grasped like a clay pot. And just as what is discriminated as existent should be abandoned, what cannot be known by any form of consciousness should also be abandoned. That is why I say to abandon dharmas and non-dharmas. Lord of Lanka, I have answered what you have asked. End chapter 2, part 2.